All right, so this is the wrap up. I know I promised, I think, in my turn 2 video that there would be a turn 3 through 5 video. Fortunately, I had a little bit of a problem with the YouTube Capture app on my iPhone, and ultimately I figured out that the video only took about 16% of the 32 minutes, and the rest of it, something happened and it couldn't load. So, thanks, Google. But anyway, I figure you've gotten a gist of the flow of the game, and you've seen pretty much everything that the game has to offer. The activation system, the battle system and all the different modifiers, the various units and their abilities, stuff like that. So if you're interested, or if you want to know, what happened in turns 3 through 5 is essentially it got to the point where the tribal player was about to have all 8 of the lowland tribes active that he needed, and the Roman player couldn't stop him. There was one final battle where if the Roman player had inflicted enough casualties on one of the tribes, they would have been demoralized and they wouldn't have counted toward the 8, and things could have continued. But it didn't go that way for the Roman player. He did win the battle, but didn't inflict enough casualties. So the tribal player won. I didn't play the final turn, but it was obvious that was going to happen. This is very similar to what happened the other times that I've played this. The Roman player has a really tough time stopping the tribal player from getting to 8 active lowland tribes. It's very difficult to demoralize a tribe. The tribal player knows the demoralization level that's needed and will, refuse to engage in battle with a tribe that's close to its demoralization level, and he's got enough new ones coming in and fresh blood that he can use those new tribes that are further from being demoralized. Also, even if there is a tribe that's close to demoralization, if it's in a stack with one or more other tribes, the tribal player can choose to take as casualties, casualties from other tribes to avoid getting to that demoralization level. Also, the tribal player really doesn't have to stand and fight in most cases. And the reason for that is because all he needs to do to win is get units to specific locations within the various tribal centers of the tribes he's trying to activate. In most cases, he has to be in control of a specific location. In a few cases, it says something like no Roman units, in the tribal land or whatever, but those are pretty easy for him to do because the Roman player is very weak in southern England at the beginning of the game, and all of his reinforcements come in from sort of the northwestern edge of the map in Wales and have to travel a long distance with fairly slow movement rates down to where the action is. So I've never been able, as the Roman player, to successfully get enough force down around in the southern part to defend tribal centers from the tribal player as he's trying to control them to bring the tribes in to be active. I gotta figure there's a way to do that. If there's not, then this game is really heavily, favors the tribal player from a balance perspective. There are optional rules that I didn't use, one of which specifically, the variable activation for the tribes, may make things more difficult for the tribal player. So at some point in the future, maybe I'll try that one, only because I feel like with the way it is right now, it's really hard for the Roman player to have a hope of winning. Maybe someone who's played the game, has had better luck or has hit upon a better strategy for the Roman player. A corollary of that is I don't know how differently the game is going to play every time. The times that I've played it, it's all played pretty much the same way, with the tribes activating in pretty much the same order, the tribal player sending his fastest units to those different centers to activate the tribes, and having a couple of battles in and around the Catavellauni homeland there in central, south central Britain, and then sort of dispersing and avoiding battle where possible to avoid having one of his tribes become demoralized. And the Roman player is stuck trying to chase the tribes around and offer battle, or get them to offer battle. So, that makes me kind of think that every time you play it, it's going to kind of turn out that way. So, I guess from a review perspective, can I recommend the game? Well, if you have an interest in this particular historical period, there aren't a lot of games about this period. So I would say it's worth picking up and worth trying just for that. If the Roman Britain, historical period doesn't really interest you, I can't really say that there's much to recommend this game outside of that in comparison to all the other great games that are out there. This doesn't bring a whole lot new to the table. There is this sort of asymmetric scenario at the beginning, and there's a lot of neat chrome around the battle modifiers that I'm sure, exist in other war games too. So, I can't really say that this is such a great game that even if you don't care about the subject matter, you should go out and get it. I would say that the subject matter would be the thing that would cause you to want to play this. And if the subject matter doesn't interest you, there's probably not much of a need, to get this. It is cheap. I think I got it for like $15, and since it's a magazine game, it's not expensive to ship. So if you can find it inexpensively, it might be worth picking up. But again, unless you have a burning interest in the subject matter, it's probably not worth getting. Other treatments of this topic, there's the Richard Berg game. I think it's called Druid from the early 80s. That's more of a hex encountery type game. Probably, similar. It's a similar, time period in the evolution of war games, so it's probably somewhat similar. And that game had an update, I think, that was done to it in maybe the late 2000s. And I think it turned it into more of a card-driven game. So I'd probably like to pick one or both of those up in the future just to see what they offer in comparison to this particular one. Again, this one has a lot of strengths, and I really want to like it, but I just can't get over the fact that it's really hard for the Roman player to win. That's really what it boils down to. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. I hope if anyone was interested in this old, obscure 1985 magazine war game, that this would help you decide, whether or not this is for you. And maybe I'll do some more videos on some other equally obscure early 80s war games in the future.